Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our first Martalks webinar on composable digital transformation. And the reason that we're hosting this series with the leaders of technology departments within merchants in the United States is because there's a tremendous amount of confusion out there. And a lot of it has been propagated by the legacy monolith platform vendor community by adopting the terminology that's been created by the composable movement to, I think, obfuscate the shortcomings of their architecture for addressing modern e-commerce. And I'm going to try not to name names, but I think that I owed it to my community to bring some clarity. That composable e-commerce is the best solution we yet have within the technology community to provide brands the opportunity to realize their best self, their aspirations for customer engagement, customer experience management, for hyper-personalization, for real-time personalization, to leverage AI, to access their data, to do it better, stronger, faster, and yes, cheaper, with fewer people. And that is the promise of composable and has been realized by many hundreds of merchants in Europe. It's been slower here in the United States. And I think that's because we've lacked a few independent voices that are authentic, talking about their experiences with composable. So towards that end, my thesis has been stated. I'm joined by some wonderful leaders within the retail technology community. And again, I'm going to thank them again right now. We're joined by Diane Randolph, the former CTO and leader of companies such as Shoe Carnival, Newmine, and many more, Ulta Beauty, Reitman's, NSB Group, who's been through this, as well as Fred Argir, the chairman and CEO of the Argir Group, former CDO, Chief Digital Officer, and CIO of Maurice's, Barnes & Noble, Toys R Us, Sports Authority. And we're going to talk about composable digital transformation and roadmap. That is our first topic of this series. So once again, thank you for joining us, Fred and Diane.
Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Well, I think we should start off with, talking a little bit about the platforms both of you have had a chance to wrangle during your tenures. And I guess we could start off with Fred. Fred, tell us about the beasts that you've slain to bring your brands online.
Well, thank you, Daryl. Beasts probably resemble what other people would say, but I would, there's everything from a business going through a massive transformation through M&A, which leads to the realization of costs associated with archaic architecture, archaic solutions that really limit the ability for a business to take advantage of opportunity. And if we look through the years, I can say everything from obviously SAP, Oracle, and all the Microsoft solutions, but really it's about the change in the industry and the obstacles, then the headwinds that we've faced throughout the years, with the limited ability to react to business opportunity. And that headwind is costly. It is frustrating. And it tends to be not just an IT function, but it's a way of thinking. So I won't go much further than that, but the culture of history has been complex systems, complex environments where things just can't happen. We've all heard of companies say, well, I can't react to that because my quote unquote systems will not allow me to do that. That's that just kills me. It's like business is business. We must react. Business has changed so dramatically over the last 30 years. But our inability from an IT or a digital perspective to say, let's go make that happen, or what if, or have we thought about, let's give it a try, is really unfortunate. I think the great companies out there have embraced newer technologies, newer ways of thinking and cultures, certainly like composable, that allow them to really play to win all the time.
Diane, you've obviously been through your share of replatforms and reasons for those needing to take place. Where have you seen the real log jams in terms of making that decision and in terms of the capabilities of the solutions?
Well, I was fortunate. My two CIO roles. One you mentioned was in Reitmans, depending on where you live in the country. It's pronounced differently. And then at Ulta Beauty. And it was interesting because, Canadian retailers were slower to adopt e-commerce in general than pretty much anywhere else in the world, even though, surprisingly enough, the infrastructure of broadband and everything was there. But the population is such that most live very close to an urban center. Shopping in stores was easy, and Canada's a little more conservative. So luckily, it was about 20 years ago where Reitmans, which at the time had 8 distinct divisions, each one operating across the entire country of Canada, with different populations and different languages. We were moving to a transactional website from our really marketing promotional sites, and realized that we faced a lot of the complexities that most of the platforms did not handle. A cost-effective way to run 8 sites, each running in 2 languages, and each having a different, some had loyalty programs, some had CRM, others had, they were similar but different enough. So luckily, the technology at that point was beginning to modernize. And again, talking how Europe always leads in this space, we were able to find Demandware as, now Salesforce, obviously acquired later by Salesforce, as our choice of product. They had the kind of expertise to help us figure out how to manage, essentially 16 sites in a cost-effective way, and to really have a common foundation, but be able to have each brand have their own voice and differentiation. Because many Canadian consumers never actually realized for a long time that those 8 brands were actually owned by the same company. So I was fortunate in that. I kind of didn't come in, I came in right at the cusp of, or we launched e-commerce right about the cusp of, having those capabilities. Then I, joined Ulta and saw, a great site that had been developed on ATG, a more monolithic platform. And its main goal was to be highly transactional, efficient transactionally, right? Because the volume at Ulta was pretty staggering. Our year-over-year e-commerce growth was the envy of many, and especially on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, it was just insane. Strap in and keep your fingers crossed. So, but that was a commodity where transactions, yes, were important. We wanted people to be able to efficiently put things in their bags and buy them, but we were really focusing on delivering a consistent customer experience that was similar in our stores to what they experienced online. And traditionally, Ulta had always various creative promotions, gift with purchase, buy this, get this type of event. And of course, our in-store systems had the history of being very flexible. The retail POS industry grew up that way, and that was not matched with the online version. So our customers couldn't relate or understand to why they couldn't get the same promotion. We had to invent and massage different kinds of things online, and that really was not what we were about. We were about feeling the same whether you were in the store or experiencing us on the digital channel. There's also so much about beauty that's about building community and learning. There's so many new products, there's so many trends and things you need to see from a video or a different presentation perspective, and those are again not addressed by your traditional monolithic platform, as well as it being extremely expensive. And when I think about having our own servers to run that site, and what we would have to do every year to bulk up for holiday volume, was just crazy, and pointed to the absolute need to be a cloud native solution that would take advantage of that kind of infrastructure.
Let me ask, what was the seminal event that led to you selecting composable architecture for your last digital transformation?
Well, we clearly realized that we were not able to deliver the experiences that we wanted to. Sometimes not even without, it wasn't even a cost constraint issue. Promotions, just that platform could not deal effectively with the promotions that we wanted to be able to deliver. And we also realized that we were not as nimble as we needed and wanted to be. Because we had to do a full end-to-end regression test on the entire stack, before implementing a new release. The best we could hope for was monthly releases, and nothing even remotely resembling CI/CD and continuous improvement. So one was to be able to introduce more capabilities when we needed, as the market dictated, and also to further enable the digital team to be able to do more themselves and not always have IT be the keepers of all the unlock of all the capabilities. And we also recognized that it was time to work differently in a product type of mindset and more pod-based, blending the digital teams, the marketing teams, and the technology teams as one cohesive work unit. So the technology was what supported that.
You had several key objectives there: to have true omnichannel experience, the ability to innovate, to have the ability to empower the business users within marketing to do their own thing in real time and not be totally reliant on programming, and to alleviate the need to do testing of the entire stack to do anything, which is certainly that doesn't take a couple of minutes. That takes more. That takes a little bit longer than that. And those are the key goals that are shared by most folks that are looking at composable. Who was it that? How did you first identify your key commerce platform vendor? Was it did you do your own research? Did the platform vendor reach out to you and your team, or was it an agency?
We basically, Ulta is probably one of the key secrets to their success. And I didn't mention I retired from there 4 years ago, but still stay very connected to the team and everything that's happening there. But it's probably the most collaborative, cross-functional organization I've ever been exposed to. And my years at a software vendor, I got exposed to a lot of different retailers. So it wasn't just the two I was comparing. So it really was a total team sport, if you will. We understood that this is what we needed and wanted to do. Really, the person taking the top lead role was our chief digital officer. But she worked, I was involved heavily, my head of enterprise architecture. We also have, or Ulta has, a fantastic procurement team, which is much more about just pricing and contracts. They really understand the business needs. So we worked together as a group to isolate what our requirements were, from what did the digital team need to achieve, what did we need from a technology infrastructure perspective, what were we looking for in partners, and then we put out an RFP. And we selected, the group together came up with the candidate choices. This was back in 2019, so the number of players was even smaller. But Commerce Tools was one of the ones that bubbled to the top relatively quickly. it was clear that they were the winner, that they really did have the true composable solution. Many were saying at that time that they did or were going there, but we needed somebody who could prove that they had delivered solutions at scale.
Well, we've been joined by Stuart McKeachie. Stuart, wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you.
It's Stuart, the Chief Technology Officer of Serena and Lilly, formerly the VP of Technology at Williams-Sonoma, formerly the VP of Business Applications at Restoration Hardware. I dare say you know a fine couch when you see one.
I have seen a few.
You've seen a few. Well, I appreciate you joining us on our panel today. We were just discussing with Diane and Fred in terms of roadmap, what was the seminal event that led to you're selecting composable architecture for your digital transformation? And I followed up with Diane with the question, how did you find out about that core vendor?
We were with a more legacy monolithic platform that really couldn't represent the products that the business wanted to present. So if you think of a couch, you can think of a lot of product variations associated to that, 250 odd fabrics, cushion fill, leg colors, sizes. When you put all of those things together, it makes a lot of product variations. And due to limitations in the other platforms, we really couldn't present all of those limitations in a way we wanted to present them on the site. We also had an architecture that was being deprecated. So the vendor that we had was moving to a different architecture. And then I've been following really composable commerce since the Williams-Sonoma days and just looking at what was happening in that space, where it was going, and where the industry was moving towards in each of these different vendors. So as you put all those things together, that's how we ended up needing to do a replatform for the website, move to something different. We're going to move to a different architecture. How do we have the flexibility really wanted by the business to do all the things they wanted to do in the near future, and hopefully not have to replatform again in any time soon?
And how many countries are you currently live in?
Yeah, we're only in 2. So we're North American only in terms of selling. So okay. It's just within the continent, within the US, and Canada.
And Diane, how many countries was Ulta live in?
Ulta, actually, that's an interesting part of the journey because, as I mentioned, we knew we wanted to go on this journey. But one of the things that sort of spurred us into action was because we were planning a launch into Canada at that time. And so, number one, we needed a solution to be able to do that, that wasn't easily supported by our monolithic platform. And we also saw that as a way to de-risk the mothership, if you will, by being able to launch the site in a smaller, volume market where we could tweak it, tune it, because that was always one of our concerns was, could we get composable to be as responsive and as fast as we needed it to be on Black Friday when the doors opened, if you will. So what happened was we had leases signed, we were well on our way to getting ready to open those stores, and then COVID hit. And at that time, we decided, I was still in my role, I hadn't retired yet, and we decided we were going to pull back and not launch Canada. So then the roadmap actually had to pivot, and we went from what would have been a full, launch everything that was part of the new experience in one shot with the launch of Canada to how are we going to phase it in to de-risk it for the US business. So the short, that was a long answer to say right now Ulta operates only in one country. They have just announced that they're actually going into Mexico with a partner. So it'll be a different business model. But when I was at Reitman's, again, when I talked about using Demandware, we did have some US presence for some of our divisions. So we had multi-language and multi-country for that business.
Stuart, back to you. When you made the decision to go with composable, was it the vendor, was it an agency, or was it your team that defined who you would be approaching?
It was really a combination mostly of our integration partner and some of our team. So our integration partner, we brought in someone from our integration partner to do the RFP and to work through that. We had a fairly extensive RFP for several thousand questions and areas that we worked through for a number of months, just in understanding what the business is really going after, what they wanted to do, what sort of capabilities they needed and wanted within the site, and how to classify those, as well as exposing them to other pieces that are out there, right, to our business counterparts, and exposing them to different thoughts and other ways of looking at things to see when they're interested in that, and go through that education process as we start to build that out. We did that with a vendor, which is our integration partner. And from that, we chose the vendors that were invited to participate in the response.
And in your first RFP, in terms of how many core modules did you have, how many SLAs did you have that you put on your roadmap?
Core modules being things like just the storefront, the presentation space, the back end, how to do the back end integration pieces, search, personalization is very, very important in both of those things. The DAM, content management systems, those were the main pieces that we had within that. In terms of SLAs, I think of that slightly different, because I tend to think in terms of response time and responsiveness and support within those things, rather than necessarily functions or features that we want within the composing architectures.
Well, it sounds like you had 6 different vendors.
We ended up with 3. A lot of integration that has to be done to tie your compositions together. So the orchestration that sits in the middle turns out to be very, very important in what you do and how you go about it.
Now, Fred, I'm going to ask you what the most complicated roadmap you've had. I'm looking for, I'm thinking it's going to be a smaller number, but go ahead and shock me.
So I would say the most complicated situation I've been in was recently we went into a retailer who was purchased out of a holding company. And in that purchase, they received some information, some data, some client lists, some inventory, and a little bit of code. But the retailer needed to stand itself up as a standalone retailer. And we had 36 months to get it done. So as a $1.2 billion apparel business with international sourcing, and so we had to start from scratch, Daryl. So in our particular case, we were given the value-added opportunity to say, wait a minute, let's start with composable. How can we think about this so we build an infrastructure, a total infrastructure from scratch, which is something I thought I would never be able to see in my career. But I had no legacy, folks. I mean, I had nothing I had to look back on. I could only look forward. So in our case, we brought in a total of about 12 vendors, but we had everything, you guys. In terms of the sort of core composable piece, though, ours tended to be in that 3 to 4 range, because remember, we're creating everything. How we found that is we traveled. We went and spoke to people all over the world. And specifically in the Middle East and the Indian area, and as well as some Europe friends, and then came back and sat down. I will add, not only was this timely in terms of getting a 36-month effort done, but the company had no IT team. So we had to build the team at the same time we're building the strategy, at the same time that we're actually executing. So I was really afforded the great opportunity to go hire people that were smart about this. that we could then lever into our vendors in a smart way to say, let's build this from the onset and then build that efficiency in for our business. And then lastly would be the business component, right? Because the business has to be integral in these kind of conversations. So if you look at even on the digital side, we want, as a matter of fact, we want our website to look like, let's say we had a registry, let's say we had an app, let's say we had a POS system. Diane, you mentioned earlier, POS is not caught up to that. Absolutely. I mean, we were living in the archaic age at that time. And so the ability to build those modules, those consumable modules, was a great opportunity for us to limit the time for development, to deliver to what the business needed in order for the business to be strategic and to get there from a costly manner, right? But also to go back to the P&L of IT, where the P&L of IT was fantastically impacted by these approaches because we were able to streamline everything we had, negotiate accordingly, and then build the right team.
There's certainly, when you start to look at deploying composable, there are certain strategic roles within the organization that are higher level that may not exist in an existing IT team. And being able to determine that is a critical part of roadmap. So when you were building from scratch, obviously you had the opportunity to go, I'm going to create the ultimate developer playground so that anybody that comes into this organization is going to have a magnificent developer experience because they're going to be working with the latest and greatest solutions within composable. And they're not going to have any limitations in terms of what they can create. But when you were developing your roadmap, and I'll go back to Stuart, and you said, okay, this is the architecture that we're going to build. When you looked at your team, did you have all the pieces there that you needed?
No, certainly not. We certainly needed better upskilling in architecture, and particularly around the integrations. I can't emphasize enough how important getting that data integration and orchestration done right was in our particular project. And probably the hardest part of it was that data orchestration in there. So getting the skills that understood the architectures, could think in those ways, and bring them in was something that we didn't have in the team at the time and needed to bring in.
Was that process fun? Did you enjoy going out and finding that person?
Well, we had a little complication in our project at the same time that our primary vendor had decided to change their business model and go to product development and no longer be in staff augmentation. So I had to swap out about 30 people at the same time as we started doing this project. So it had a little complication to it that was interesting.
I'm sure that you had a rich, full head of hair before you began that project.
Yes.
So, kudos to you for surviving and for being with us today. I mean, you're a remarkably resilient individual. 30. Okay, great. Well, Diane, I'm going to take it you haven't been through that much of a game change, but when you looked at your team and were saying, all right, this is the architecture we're selecting, what did you do? What did you have all the pieces that you needed? And if you needed new pieces, who were they?
Well, we had already, in anticipation of this, set up a cloud engineering team within our infrastructure group. So they were the ones to determine the tool set and the as Stuart talks about, the data integration, all of that. Where we did at the end of the journey want to be autonomous and be able to do our own development from that point on. So we relied on both the design studio and the system integrator we chose to do that knowledge transfer, as well as additional education. We had already experimented with API microservices development, triggered by some of our top, e-com and digital architects encouraging us to do that. So in our app, which we developed ourselves, and other areas of the experience, we did have some of that experience. So we were able to build on that with the help of the partners that we chose.
So in terms of, I want to talk a little bit about timeline here and compare and contrast the timeline to go live with all these components versus a typical legacy monolith solution. Now, I'm not going to say that there's been endless implementations of some of the legacy solutions I'm familiar with, but there have. Let's talk. First, we'll go to Stuart. Now, Stuart, how long did you budget from a timeline, just the commerce portion of your transformation?
So once all the contracts are signed and the teams assembled, we were budgeting at the time about 12 to 13 months.
Was that realistic? Was that realistic?
No, we missed it by about 2 months. So it was really about 14 months.
You had 30 people that you had to hire and you missed it by 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope you got a really nice bonus. I mean, I'm just saying.
That's kind. Thank you.
A Christmas card, something. I mean, I feel like I should send you flowers myself, but whatever. Fred, for this new $1 billion retailer, what did you budget just for the commerce engine, the commerce site?
Itself, Daryl, was in the 12 to 14 months range as well. However, because we were also bringing up supply chain and ERP and everything else at the same time, we needed to be very sensitive of that architecture platform. So we were constantly being thoughtful as we were building so that we were contributing to the culture or to the platform. So in our case, we did it in 12 months, but it took us another year, almost a year and a half, to react to the other things that were going on around it. We had an agreement with the original holding company, so we were actually coding our site with the old supply chain in mind as we were then pivoting to the new supply chain up after we actually launched. So the efficiencies of the enterprise architecture was absolutely critical for us because we could not afford downtime. And as it turned out, COVID hit, so our stores closed, and our only way of income was e-com. So it turned out that fortunately we did that first. We hit our timeline, and we were able to smooth out the revenue side of the business appropriately.
Well, I'm gonna ask you a follow-up question here, Fred. Diane mentioned earlier that at Ulta, it was the chief digital officer who really had ownership for this entire transition, this transformation, this project. At your client, who really internally, who was the internal champion and owner of that process?
Well, I served for them as their CIO and CDO. So, and I partnered very closely with the CEO, the CFO, but with the equity firm. And the equity firm was obviously very invested in our success. And so we had, meetings weekly, we had meetings monthly, the board meetings, this was always a topic. Where are we today? So that was critical. What I would say, though, is in the world of change like this, other business partners really needed to be with us. And so I give a lot of credit to the rest of the executive leadership team because they had to invest to get smart quickly to help us understand the direction that they wanted to see this go. So in a way, everyone was a stakeholder around that ELT team because the amount of change that the company was going through. But I would say it didn't go without many conversations with the equity firm saying, can we pull this off or not? So, I had fantastic partnerships with the peers in the company and fantastic partnership with that equity firm. And together we made good decisions. And there were a lot of learnings along the way, but we did pull it off. We actually rebuilt the retailer in 28 months. So it worked very well.
Got it. And Stuart, I'm just going to say, I hope the heck you were in charge because having 130 people and not be in charge. I'm in awe of you already. Okay, I'm a fan. What can I say?
Thank you. I had a fabulous partner in the CMO who was in charge of e-commerce as well. We were hand in hand as we went through this. She's a very, very bright individual and did a lovely job in actually setting up the changes we want. We also went through, a third-party design firm. So we changed the look and feel of the site as well at the same time as we're going through that. And she led all of those efforts. So it was really important to have a partnership with the business and have the business buying into what we were doing. And I don't think you can really be successful unless you have that.
Well, there's two critical questions that I'm looking at time here, and I want to be respectful of everyone's, but I really want to know, you know, in the roadmap process, first off, what you wish the agencies were able to, the key integrators were able to contribute in each of your cases, in particular about how to construct this roadmap. That's the first question I'm going to ask you each. And then the second one is, what do you think the vendors could have done differently or better in terms of helping you with your roadmap? So we'll start off with, from the agency perspective, you've made the choice. What do you wish they could have shared or known or had an expertise in, or what did they do that you thought was phenomenal in terms of constructing your roadmap? And we'll start with Brett.
Yeah, so we didn't use an agency, but our business teams were highly involved in and helping us understand their direction. I would say I wouldn't change anything of what our business partners did. I think they were great. They tolerated, in some cases 40, 50, 60% of their team's time dedicated to this work without really understanding the bits and bytes, and nor did they need to, but really saying, if we don't get this right, we don't have a business. So, failure was not an option, and everyone's contribution support was very, very critical. And I would say there's not much I would ask differently of them today.
So you're essentially saying that your vendors, your software vendors, essentially co-developed with you for the entirety of your commerce project without the requirement of an integrations agency.
That is correct. Now we hired key people to do some of these roles that we wouldn't typically hire. Given 30 plus years in retail, I sort of got the opportunity because I was employee number one in IT. So I had the opportunity to pick up the phone and call the best. And I really got a CTO that I think he reported to me at Target way back in the years. The guy was brilliant. He had the right vision, and he came in and really, I gave him the authority to just go. And he was much smarter than me in a lot of these things. But that, with keeping our business well informed along the way, and then holding our vendors accountable, was critical. I will say it was a difficult time because it was in COVID, and 90% of our vendor force was overseas. And a terrible, difficult time for the businesses. I spoke at 7 funerals of people that were working for us. So we were losing people. People were scared. Companies, it was a really difficult time. But collectively, everybody rallied because the mission was clear. We knew where we wanted to go. We didn't know how to get there, but we embraced good ideas. We made the decisions quickly, and we moved.
Outstanding. Well, I love hearing the support that you received from the composable community, because that was a variety of vendors having to do that. And I love the fact that even though they were remote for the most part and dealing with unprecedented circumstances, they hung in there. They got it done. Yeah. Diane, how about yourself? What do you wish the agency, or did you use an agency, could have done differently or better? What did they do that was fabulous?
Well, we used an agency, we used an SI, both of whom had experience with composable and with commerce tools. I'd say the roadmap was really developed collaboratively. We knew what we needed and wanted to do, and there were a few tweaks along the way. I would say, one of the things that I see now, and I'm a board advisor for a company called Orium, that it really helps when there are accelerators, right? So I think that's a question I would have asked differently. Is we didn't want to recreate the exact experience, right? So we were changing the experience at the same time while maintaining the performance. But having something to start with would have been and had we known to ask, we may have potentially chosen some different partners. Right? So.
Stuart, how about yourself? What do you think the agency did right? Wish you'd known better about in terms of building your roadmap and understanding you.
Yeah, in terms of roadmap for me, I think the thing we underestimated was data orchestration and the difficulty in actually getting data from third-party systems, right? Our legacy ERP also works as our PIM. So our product information, inventory, all of that setup and orchestration as it comes through, I think was underestimated and not that well understood. Right? So I think that's an area just to focus on and get better. I think in any of these things, it all comes down to the people that you have and your selection of the people. So if you've got an agency that's just throwing bodies at you, it's not going to work. You need the right people that are going to be there for your team in your situation. And that's where I think we did fairly well. We didn't hit on everyone, right? But we did fairly well. And the agency did well for us as we went through that. So that was good to see.
Well, thank you, Stuart. Well, actually, I'm looking, we're 45 minutes past the hour here. So we didn't get to the most important questions that I had for you all, which are, primarily around fashion choices, lunch preferences, and your favorite cocktails. We're not going to be able to get to those today. Thank you so much for giving us some time today to start to peel the onion that is composable digital transformation. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you join us again.
Sounds great. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you. Thank you, Daryl.
All right. Thank you. And good afternoon to you all.
Thanks for listening to Martalks. Please leave a review and a rating on your platform of choice. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcast platforms. To find out more about how the Rosenstein Group can help you find the right leaders for your client development teams in MarTech and e-commerce, please visit our website, rosensteingroup.com.